To Sam's astonishment, when having descended the stairs and having poured back the half-cooked stew into the saucepan, he returned to the front room of the house, he found himself confronted by a little girl in the doorway, panting and sobbing. Floods of tears were streaming down her cheeks, and her voice was hardly audible. Sam knew who she was, though he had had little to do with her. "What is the matter, Nellie? You are Nellie, aren't you?" It gave him a very odd feeling to say the word Nellie at this hour and in this place. "I knows who you be," gasped the child, struggling for breath and wiping her wet cheeks with the back of her hand. "You be Holy Sam." "I see we know each other, Nellie," he said. "But what's the matter? Has Jackie Jones been hitting you again?" Her tears had not yet ceased pouring down, but at this word her eyes flashed so fiercely that it was as if the dark lantern had suddenly been turned upon him out of a torrent of rain. "I hit Jackie. I hit he into ditch. I said 'twas sport to see thick poor dog stand on hind legs when that wicked man beat as he. I have no idea what she's talking about. Her tears fell so desperately, as the image of what she had beheld came over her, that it seemed to Sam as if her thin little form would melt away before him. He had never seen a human countenance so dissolved, so literally melted in pitiful crying. "Where? What? Who?" he cried. "Tell me, Nellie, tell me, quick! Will he come and knock that wicked... Again the flood of tears broke her utterances. Sam pulled the child into the house and set her down upon a chair. "Now stop crying, Nellie, and tell me quick where this man is who's hurting this dog. Will he come with Holy Sam, and kill thick wicked... Where is he? Where is it?" cried Sam again. And then the child explained to him, clearly enough now, through her streaming tears, that it was in the portion of the town between Paradise and the river, a district known as Beckery, that this was going on. As far as Sam could gather from what she said, the owner of the dog belonged to a group of small circus people who had been running a solitary merry-go-round in one of those outlying Beckery fields that are called Brides, a name that reverts to the vanished chapel of Mary Magdalene founded by St. Bridget. The child kept referring to Beckery Mill, and Sam knew that there was a sort of common with a right-of-way through it near that place. Beckery Mill, in fact, gave him the clue, and he visualized with instantaneous vividness the spot she referred to. And this time it was quite unnecessary for her despotic soul to issue any categorical commands. "I'll go at once, Nellie," he cried excitedly. "Only listen, child. I've only go on one condition, and it's a fair exchange. You stay here to look after Mr. Twig, and I'll go to Beckery. Yes, he's ill upstairs. I've had to put him to bed, but he's asleep now. I wouldn't go upstairs if I were you till you hear him stirring, or till you hear him calling. Do you understand, Nellie, dear? He's ill in bed, but he's not very ill, only a little ill." A few minutes later, Sam was making his way with resolute haste towards the quarter of the town the child had indicated. Yes, Nellie Morgan was right. Dear Beckery Mill, he soon found the crowd of nondescript loiterers near it. And there was the dog, a little black cocker spaniel, in the midst of them. When Sam came up to the outskirts of the crowd, he could catch at once by the peculiar timbre of these young ruffians' voices that they were still engaged in their cruel sport. The dog was evidently beginning now to refuse to perform any further tricks and to turn on his tormentors. Nor was there any sign of the circus people. They must have gone to their dinner, leaving the animals to the mercy of these lads. "Let that dog alone. What are you doing to him? Who does he belong to?" His interference was greeted with howls of derision and mocking cries of, "Holy Sam! Holy Sam!" Some of them were throwing stones to the dog, who kept running from side to side within their circle, seeking refuge but finding none. "Who does it belong to?" shouted Sam. "Where is its master?" Heave a gived he to I. Heave a gived he to I, cried one of the boys, whom Sam recognized at once as the stone thrower of Terry Gastee, the originator of the phrase, I'd like to. He did bite, he bad, and I did give unto I, repeated young Chinook, making a clutch of the dog's collar, which was received with a frightened snarl. Tom be feared a touchin' he, cried one of the other lads. Tom did try to pick he up, explained a third. But a bit. His hand. He be a nasty varmint, the black dog. He be a biting dog. All this while the wretched little creature, which had a coal-black glossy coat, long flapping ears, feathery legs, and a clipped tail held tightly in its frantic fear against its rump, kept making desperate and insane rushes here and there. It seemed to have been hunted and harried quite beyond the stage of barking, and had grown beside itself with terror. Sam strode forward into the middle of the circle of young demons, and uttering various assuaging murmurs, endeavored to catch the black dog. Tom Chinook, who was nearly as tall as Sam, barged against him with his shoulders as if in a game of football. His masters gave him to I, he cried. You ain't got no right to him. Holy Sam, shrieked the excited crowd. Don't ye let un have him, lads, cried an evil-looking man, who now appeared from the back of the circle. Tony Court gave him to Tom Chinook. 'Tis Tony Court's dog. 'Tisn't yours, and... Holy Sam, take that, ye biting cur, shouted young Chinook. These last words were accompanied by a vicious kick. Sam threw the lad aside and, pursuing the dog till it crouched snarling on the ground, bent down and picked it up, clutching its growling form, from which emanated a hot, sweet, dog-flesh odor, against his chest. Blindly, the panic-stricken spaniel fixed its teeth in one of Sam's wrists, as a strove to prevent its jumping down. Impeded though he was by the struggling creature, whose feathery paws scraping fiercely against his body as it tried to free itself, Sam managed to fling Tom Chinook back when he tried to drag the dog away. But the lad came at him again, and this time in such a fury that he hit Sam a nasty blow in the chin. Sam's right hand, which was quite free at this minute, instinctively clutched itself to strike back, and he was within an ace of giving the boy a blow that would have bowled him over. But that portion of his consciousness which had come to feel to him like an external soul issued, in a flash, one of its most imperative mandates. Don't be a bloody fool, he said sternly, dropping his arm. Chinook gave him one glance of wide-eyed wonder and cringed away. Hit him with stones, he shouted as soon as he was safe back among the rest. Hit him with stones, stone him. I'll make it give up the dog. Did you see the girt clip I gave him? His advice was seconded by the grown man in the rear of the boys, but having encouraged them to go on with the fray, this individual now began to shog off, evidently feeling that Sam was a ticklish customer, and that there are moments in life when the satisfaction of cruelty must yield to the dictates of prudence. Sam looked about him, his mind moving sluggishly as he hugged the black dog against his stomach. He was surrounded now by a half-circle of stone-throwers. It's silly to stay here and make an Aunt Sally of myself, he thought. The best thing I can do is to break through them and clear off. He had scarcely formulated this thought when a stone hit the spaniel in his arms, causing it to utter a shrill yelp of pain. This decided him, and he made a fierce rush forward, heading straight for young Chinook. Although so energetic a collector of sharp stones, the nephew of Mad Bet had not been endowed by Providence with the gift of fortitude. At the sight of Sam clutching the growling dog against his ribs and running straight towards him, he took ignominiously to his heels. You know where to find me, shouted Sam after him. The flight of Tom Chinook quelled the belligerency of the whole crowd, and not a single stone was thrown again after Sam and his struggling captive. Now Beckery Mill lies on the outskirts of a certain municipal enclosure known as Whirl Park, which borders on the lower slope of Whirl Hill. Sam sank exhausted upon the first public seat he came to in Whirl Park. Placing the black spaniel on the ground, but retaining his hold upon it, he began searching his pockets for his handkerchief till he remembered that he had left it in number 1's bedroom. After a second's hesitation, he then took out his necktie, and using this as an exemplary leash, he tied it to the dog's collar. Extempore leash. Not exemplary. Extempore. By some curious psychological process, no sooner was the dog secured by Sam's tie than it accepted Sam as the liege lord of its destiny, and, in quite a symbolic manner, like a feudal servant of some cruel baron transferring his allegiance to a cockle-shell pilgrim, he rose up on his hind legs and licked Sam's bleeding wrist. Having tasted his own master's blood, his new master's blood, so desperately shed by himself, nothing could exceed the animal's intense contentment. He stretched himself up out of the ground at Sam's feet, not lying as much dogs do, but with his feathery legs stretched straight out behind him. Sam had not been long seated on his bench when a tremulously vibrant feeling that could only be described as a shiver of exultant ecstasy flowed through him. "I have seen it! I have seen it!" The heart within him cried, and in a vague, delicious, dreamy reverie he became aware of an important psychic change in his inmost self-consciousness. This change was nothing less than a coming together of his body and soul. Although his soul still felt independent of his body and free of his body, it no longer felt contemptuous of his body. It had ceased to utter its mandate in the tone of a slave driver. Its mere presence within his body at this moment seemed to make Sam's flesh feel porous and transparent, as if large, cool, undulating waves were sweeping through it. Presently, towards the seat where he rested, came a solitary girlish figure, which, as it appeared before him, assumed the unmistakable form of Miss Angela Beer. What the strange girl was doing at this place, on the edge of Whirl Park, at 2:30 on Sunday afternoon, Sam was not inquisitive enough to ask her. But it was clear that even Angela's virginal placidity was a little startled and ruffled by seeing a disheveled man rise up from the side of a black dog, a dog whom he had held fast by means of a bright blue necktie. I'm going to have to end it with that because I have to return a call. Till next time, see you in Glastonbury.